Namaskar. Well, friends, I heartily welcome you all to Bhim Bhashya, my audio-video podcast series on Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar. This audio-video podcast series consists of 54 short speeches on Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, unraveling as many as 25 different dimensions of his multifaceted genius. Friends, this podcast series is focused on Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, his thoughts, his actions, his philosophy, and above all, the grand vision that he had for our country. This is what this podcast series is all about. So let's proceed. In this episode, that is episode 11, part A, I'm going to present Dr. Ambedkar's initial years as a provincial legislator. Let us first understand the context, the political backdrop here. On 20th August 2017, the British government made a highly significant announcement. The British government adopted, and I quote, a policy of increasing association of Indians in every branch of administration and gradual development of self-governing institutions with a view to the progressive realization of responsible government in India as an integral part of the British Empire. Based on the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, the Government of India Act of 1919 was enacted. This act enlarged the Bombay Legislative Council and increased the strength of elected members to be greater than that of nominated and official members. Under the Government of India Act of 1919, there was a provision for one nominated member representing the depressed classes. On behalf of the Bahishkruta Hitakarini Sabha, Dr. Ambedkar was trying to persuade the British government to increase the representation of the depressed classes. In 1926, December 1926, the British government raised the number of nominated members from 1 to 2 and appointed Dr. Ambedkar and Dr. P.G. Solanki as those two representatives. For Dr. Ambedkar, this was going to be a long and distinguished career as a legislator. As a nominated member of the Bombay Legislative Council, Dr. Ambedkar quickly earned himself a reputation for his studious, analytical, and comprehensive interventions. Here are some examples. As we have seen in the last episode, that is episode 10, Dr. Ambedkar spoke extensively and made constructive suggestions about the school, college, and university education and general education reforms. While participating in the debate on prohibition, it was in March 1927, among others, Dr. Ambedkar argued that the government policy on prohibition has failed. Why? Because on account of the high tariff on country liquor, people were drinking less of licit liquor and more of illicit liquor. On the whole, therefore, the government was not a net gainer. According to Dr. Ambedkar, the success of prohibition policy depends on the financial solution. That is to say, how the government will manage to make good the losses that are bound to occur as a result of the new excise policy. Dr. Ambedkar forcefully argued that the government must have courage to tax the people who have not been taxed. Also, increase tax on those people who have better capacity to bear that burden. On another occasion, Dr. Ambedkar strongly supported the maternity benefit bill of July 1928. In fact, he forcefully countered the arguments that were put forth against the bill. It was argued by some members in the House that pregnancy is not an accident, and therefore the so-called Workmen's Compensation Act cannot be extended to women. To this, Dr. Ambedkar countered. He agreed that pregnancy is not an accident, but that does not mean, he said, that women are not entitled to get the benefit. And he emphasized, and I quote, "It is in the interest of the nation that the mothers ought to get a certain amount of rest during the prenatal period as well as subsequently." Unquote. In October 1932, Dr. Ambedkar spoke extensively on the Village Panchayat Bill. Dr. Ambedkar said, and I quote, "Many have eulogized the ancient system of village panchayats, calling them rural republics." I quote again. He said, "I have not the slightest hesitation in saying that they have been the bane of public life in India." Unquote. Dr. Ambedkar went on to present his firm conviction. This is very important quote. Dr. Ambedkar said, and I quote, "If India has not succeeded in producing nationalism, if India has not succeeded in building a national spirit, the chief reason for that is the existence of the village system. It made all people saturated with local particularism, with local patriotism. It left no room whatsoever to larger civic spirit, none whatsoever." Unquote. Dr. Ambedkar strongly criticized the contention of the bill that the village panchayat shall be elected on the basis of adult suffrage for both males and females. According to him, adult suffrage was necessary but not sufficient for the depressed classes. Dr. Ambedkar argued that depressed classes are in a minority in every village. Adopting the adult suffrage cannot convert a minority into a majority. He emphasized, and I quote, "I am bound to insist that if these village panchayats come, there shall be special representation for the minorities, at any rate for the depressed classes." Unquote. I'll come back to this theme, Dr. Ambedkar as a provincial legislator, in the later part of this podcast series to discuss Dr. Ambedkar's role as an elected member of Bombay Provincial Assembly. In the next two episodes, I propose to talk about Dr. Ambedkar's role as a presenter of memoranda to the British government. Well, friends, let's conclude this session here. If you like this podcast series, please like it, share it, and subscribe to it. So long, my friends, until we meet again real soon. Thank you. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.